Seconds passed like minutes, and I couldn't take much more. I had to take my chances and get out of this paranormal house. My name is Rachel. I'm 25 years old and I've been a babysitter for 5 years, and I have never experienced anything unusual. On a few occasions, I've heard some strange noises, but it's always been an animal or gusts of wind. That was until the night I'll never forget, or be able to understand fully. It was August 12th, 2018. I was babysitting for a new family, so I had never been to this house before. This house was peculiar as it almost looked abandoned. I had to drive through some long country lanes and a small forest to get here. Anyway, I pulled up to the house, got out of my little white car, and made my approach. As I knocked on the wooden door, an unexplainable shiver stroked my body. I froze. The door squeaked open, and a tall, beautiful woman named Lisa welcomed me in. I decided to forget about that cold shiver and proceeded on with the evening. "Thank you so much for babysitting last minute," Lisa expressed happily. "Due to us staying away for the night, it was hard to find a babysitter. I forgot to mention this was a 24-hour stay." Lisa and her husband left for their night away. The evening started well. There were 2 girls, one named Rose and the other named Violet. Rose had bright blue eyes with long blonde hair, and Violet had bright brown eyes with short brown hair. We played games for 2 hours. I then decided it would be good if we settled and watched a movie. The girls changed into their matching pink night dresses, and we got comfy and had some snacks for the movie. 8:50 is when it started. 1 hour into the movie, I heard the old wooden kitchen door squeak as if it were being opened by someone. I instantly turned my head and saw it move. I thought maybe it was some wind like my past experiences, but unfortunately, it wasn't. I snuggled with the girls and tried distracting myself with the movie. As we were watching the movie, I couldn't help but notice how tall the walls were. My eyes were drawn to these interesting marks on them, almost like hand scratches. As I was investigating the walls with my eyes, Rose stood up unexplainably, and her body froze as she stared into the kitchen. I was petrified. It was so silent I could hear every drop of rain that was happening outside. Rose, is everything okay, sweetie?" I asked her with a stutter. Rose stared into my soul, and I experienced that unexplainable shiver like earlier. Bang, the flower pot of rotten flowers fell off the table, smashing into pieces. I turned around, and once I turned back to Rose, she was gone in the blink of an eye. Violet was silent. I comforted Violet and asked her to stay here and finish watching the movie. She was okay with that. I crept my way around the spine-chilling house in hopes of finding Rose. There was no sign of her downstairs, so I slowly walked up the creaky stairs and found Rose in a dark room, frozen. "Rose," I shouted, "come here, love you. Can't be in this dark room on your own." And as I finished my sentence, the light flashed on. It then flashed off. Rose turned to me and said, "Sorry, I was just looking for something," I replied. "That's okay. What are you looking for?" Rose said in a happy yet freaky tone, "My friend, I was petrified." "Come on, Rose. Let's go finish the movie with your sister," I implied. Rose walked with me back to the lounge. 30 minutes passed, and we were all settled on the sofa. I thought it was over until Rose stood up and walked to the corner of the room. Before I could say anything, she turned to face me and Violet, and her eyes appeared black in seconds. She raised her hand towards her sister, and this powerful presence came from her as she threw her sister across the room. As I ran towards Violet to help her, I was pulled by my long hair and dragged to the floor. I looked around and there was no one there. Rose had disappeared. I jumped to Violet and she was hurt and scared. I comforted her. The next thing I did was grab her and my keys to escape. We got to the door and Violet pulled me back. I turned to look at her and her brown eyes were rolled back, pure white. Rose appeared standing behind her. She said, my friend is now in Violet," she said in a deep voice. I couldn't understand what was happening. Violet said in a deep, possessed voice, "We are going to make you like us," and laughed devilishly. As I turned to grab the door handle, Violet grabbed my arm and chucked me down the hallway. Behind me was Rose, laughing. She leaned down for me, and I pulled her legs to make her fall. I sprinted to find another way out. There was no way. I locked myself in a tiny room. I reached for my phone and called the parents. No answer. Time felt like forever. I knew there was only one thing to do. Run back to the front door and get out. What else could I do? I've never run so fast in my life. Through the kitchen, into the hallway, and out that door. As my feet ran through the wet floor, almost making me slip, I made it to my car. I got into my car safely and realized the girls had disappeared. The parents called me back and Lisa spoke. "Hello, love, are you okay?" "We know." I said, "You know what?" I said, confused. "Your girls are not well." Possessed like, "I know, love, I know, we had to get away," she said in a scared voice as the phone cut off. Starting the week, I had a lovely family wanting me to babysit their little girl. Little did I know I was about to experience my biggest fear. It was a sunny Tuesday morning. I was ahead of schedule. I had completed my morning walk, packed my bag, and was about to set off for my 2-day stay babysitting. I was babysitting an 8-year-old girl named Isabella. Her father had to go away for a business meeting, so he needed someone to stay for 2 nights. The house was an hour away from where I lived. It was in a small village named Ravenwood. I should have taken that as a sign. I arrived at this old, beautiful big house. It has been there for a decade. The garden was overflowing with grass as if it hadn't been cut in years. My husband had dropped me off as my car was being fixed. I got my bags and said goodbye to my husband. As I followed a gravel path to the door, I couldn't help but notice a strange, freaky figure in one of the dusty windows at the top of the house. I assumed it was the girl I was babysitting. I reached up and knocked on this huge brown door. The father Bradley opened the door. "You must be the babysitter," he said. "Yes, my name is Sarah. Nice to meet you," I said happily. "Please come on in," he said, welcoming me in. As I walked into the Victorian house, I saw a pretty little girl sitting on the staircase. It was Isabella. She had long brown hair which shone in the light. She also had big brown eyes. She was dressed smartly, wearing a polka dot dress. Bradley took me to his office. I was admiring the house as we walked through the long, big corridors to his office. The hallways had bookshelves and a big standing wooden clock. The floors were made from hardwood, and the walls were made from stone. The house smelt of wood and aged fabric. Anyway, we got into his office and he walked me through his daughter's routine. He told me what she likes and the food he has prepared for her. 30 minutes later, Bradley was leaving for his meeting, and I will never forget when he walked out the tall wooden doors. He looked back at me and said, "Oh, I forgot to mention, do not move the doll," he said in fear as he shut the door on himself. I froze for a minute and thought to myself, that was creepy. What doll is he on about? I hoped he was messing around as I feared dolls. I decided to find Isabella and see what she was up to. I searched the lonely house and found Isabella in a dark room, coloring by herself. I bent down next to her and asked if I could join in. Isabella nodded her head slowly and passed me a red pen. I went to color and she had drawn a creepy-looking doll. I did not want to ask questions, so I also drew a doll next to hers. Time passed and it was time for dinner. Using the vintage glass stove, I made Isabella fish pie with veg and put it in a china bowl. When I gave her her food, she asked where the second bowl was. I was confused, and she said, "The second bowl for my friend Bella." I replied, "What friend, darling? It's only me and you here." She got angry and said, "No, my friend Bella, she needs her food." Isabella finally calmed down and ate her food. I played some games with her and continued with the night. It was now time for bed. I walked Isabella to her room and tucked her in. She thanked me and implied, "Don't forget to tuck Bella in. Otherwise, it will make her mad and you don't want to see her mad." I replied, Yes, I will tuck Bella in. If you need me, I will be in the spare bedroom. Good night. I walked my way through the long hallway to the spare room. The floorboards creaked as I walked over them. I got myself into bed and read my book. 10 minutes passed, and I heard a strange noise come from outside my door. It sounded like my door was being scratched at. My hands trembled. You could see my book shaking as I could not control my fear. I slowly made my way to the door and opened it. Thankfully, nothing was there. I decided to wrap myself up warm and get to sleep. This place was creeping me out, especially the big window in my bedroom, with the grand mature tree outside bashing against it. I woke to what felt like my bed sheets being pulled at. I jumped up and saw a shadow in the corner. I squeezed my eyes shut, and when I had opened them, it was gone. I went back to sleep as I wanted this night to hurry up. It was now the morning. I went to wake Isabella up, and when I entered her room, she was sitting up cuddling with this scary doll. The doll was made with porcelain, it wearing a checked dress, and it had short red-brown hair with wide blue eyes. I noticed the doll had a chunk of hair missing and its porcelain was peeling off. I gulped. Isabella, where did you get that? I stuttered. This is my friend Bella, and she is mad you did not tuck her into bed last night, she said angrily as she crossed her arms. I am very sorry. How about I make us all some breakfast? Will that help? I said. Maybe, maybe not. Only Bella can decide if that's good enough, she said as she got out of bed. We headed downstairs and she was glued to the doll. I started cooking while they both sat at the breakfast table. As I was cutting some food, my hand lost control of the knife and I had sliced my finger. Ow! I shouted. I had no idea how it happened as my grip is strong. It's like something made me do it. I looked over at the doll and I could have sworn I saw its big blue eyes move and look at Isabella. At this point, I just wanted to go home. The evening passed, and I explored the lonely house while Isabella and her doll were playing. 2 doors down from the spare bedroom where I was staying there was a peculiar-looking door. It was damaged and hanging on by a thread. I decided to enter. Maybe I could find some answers. As I entered the room, it smelt of stale and old wood saturating the thick air. The room was dark, creepy, and empty. The walls were falling apart, and paint peeling from them. I saw a little wooden chair in the corner of the room. I slowly walked to it, and below the chair, there was a floorboard that had been broken. I nosed inside and found a dusty box. Inside was a piece of paper which was ripped and only just readable. The letter said, "Life will end and fear will begin. This doll is to never be messed with. Once she has been moved, it will all happen again." 1960s, the doll was moved and ended the ones who did so, except for one lady. That lady managed to remove the evil Willis spell, and the doll has been put in this chair. This chair keeps the spell alive, and if she is moved, then it's over. The curse will begin again. Please tell me this isn't real, I said in fear. I ran downstairs, almost tripping at my feet. Isabella and the doll were nowhere to be found. I needed to protect this little girl from this doll. Isabella, I shouted. No reply. I rang Bradley, and there was also no reply. I searched the house, and Isabella was in the room I had just been in, sitting in her chair, looking into my soul. Isabella, please, you need to come with me, I cried in fear. I had an incoming call from Bradley. Is everything okay? It's late, he said in a worried tone. No, it's not. Isabella moved the doll. What? Sarah, please listen to me. That doll is dangerous. There's only one thing you need to do. You need to get Isabella to put the doll back on the chair. She has a special bond with the doll and has been prohibited from entering that room. She's taking advantage as I've not been there. Only Isabella can break the curse. I'll be home as soon as I can, he said, and hung the phone up. A force pulled me to the floor by my legs and dragged me out of the room. My smooth face scrapped across the hard floor, and then the door slammed shut. I pulled myself up off the floor, wiping the dripping blood from my cheek, and pushed my way through the door. I picked up Isabella and ran. I locked us both in the bathroom and explained to her that the doll was bad and needed to be put away. She was hesitant. She tried to run past me, but I pulled her back gently. I thought to myself that I needed to try and trick her. I heard loud scratches against the door. Isabella listened to me. "Do you love this doll? If you do, then let's protect it." I whelped. "Something bad is in your doll and it's hurting it. Do you want to help your doll get better?" I said while I held her hands for support. "Yes," she replied as she looked at me with a worried face. "Okay, you need to listen to me. We will go back to the little room, and you need to place the doll back into the chair and hold it down." "Okay, I'll do anything I can to protect Bella," she cried, and she wiped her tears from her sad eyes. "Once Bella is back in the chair, we are going to leave the room." "Let's go and help Bella," I said as I held her small, soft hand. We slowly made our way to the haunted doll. Once we entered, the doll was nowhere in sight. I stormed my way through the house trying to find the doll. I found her sitting on a top shelf in the kitchen. I felt another strange force as I entered the kitchen. All of a sudden, a tall man walked through the door. It was Bradley, thank goodness. As Bradley reached for the doll, a sharp knife from its station flew at Bradley, hitting him in his arm. Bradley managed to grab the haunted doll, and we ran up the stairs to the room. Isabella was sitting there waiting. We passed the doll to Isabella, and she placed her back in the chair. I let out a sigh of relief. "It's over," I said. "Thank goodness," expressed Bradley. We made sure Isabella was okay, and Bradley explained to her that the doll can never be moved. I packed up my belongings and just wanted to be with my husband. I hadn't told him anything yet, as I knew he'd worry. I rang him and explained briefly that I had finished babysitting early and told him the rest on the journey home. A few months passed, and I thought it was all over until I saw in the newspaper that Bradley and Isabella had gone missing. I have been on edge and now live in fear that I may be next.